Michael Harrison, a prominent CEO of a leading technology company in Chicago, was accustomed to the fast-paced life that came with his position. He often dined at upscale restaurants, surrounded by the elite of society, discussing business deals and networking with influential figures. However, one fateful evening, as he was leaving a five-star restaurant with his young son, Tommy, his life took an unexpected turn. As they stepped onto the bustling sidewalk, Tommy tugged at his father's sleeve, pointing excitedly at a woman sitting on the ground. "Daddy, look at Mommy! That lady over there looks just like Mommy." The innocent words of his 8-year-old son sent a jolt through Michael. He turned to look at the woman Tommy was pointing at, and his heart sank. The woman, Kesha Williams, was dressed in tattered clothes, holding a cardboard sign asking for help. But it wasn't just her appearance that struck Michael, it was her face. The resemblance to Sarah, his late wife, was uncanny. Every feature, every expression, was identical to the woman he had loved and lost to cancer 3 years prior. Michael felt his legs buckle beneath him, and he struggled to comprehend the impossibility of the situation. How could a beggar on the streets of Chicago look exactly like his wife? It was a cruel twist of fate that left him breathless. Kesha, oblivious to the commotion she was causing, rummaged through a plastic bag, searching for something to eat. She had spent the last 2 decades living on the streets, having run away from an abusive foster home at the age of 15. The streets had become her only family, and she had learned to survive as an invisible woman, ignored and treated like trash by society. Yet, in that moment, she felt a strange energy as she caught Michael's gaze. There was something in his eyes that made her feel seen for the first time in years. Michael's mind raced with questions. He had always believed that Sarah was an only child, with no siblings or family ties that could explain this bizarre coincidence. As he stood frozen in place, tears streamed down his face, a mix of grief and confusion. Tommy, sensing his father's distress, tugged at his sleeve again, asking, "Daddy, why are you crying?" The restaurant's security guard approached Michael, concerned about his unusual behavior. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked, trying to snap him back to reality. Michael shook his head, trying to regain his composure. He had to know more about this woman who looked so much like Sarah. Gathering his courage, he approached Kesha, his voice trembling as he asked, "Excuse me, may I ask your name?" Kesha instinctively shrank back, wary of the rich man in the expensive suit. "Kesha," she replied softly, ready to run if necessary. But when Michael showed her a photo of Sarah, Kesha's eyes widened in shock. It was like looking at herself in a mirror, but with a different life, a life she had never known. As they stood there, 2 lives on the brink of intertwining, neither of them realized the profound impact this encounter would have on their futures. Michael felt an inexplicable connection to Kesha, as if fate had brought them together for a reason. But what he didn't know was that this connection would unravel secrets buried for decades, secrets that could destroy families and change lives forever. In the days following their encounter, Michael couldn't shake the image of Kesha from his mind. He became obsessed with uncovering the truth about her past. He hired James Mitchell, the best private detective in Chicago, to dig into Kesha's history. As James began his investigation, Michael's heart raced with anticipation and dread. What if Kesha was indeed connected to Sarah in some way? What if she was a long-lost sister or a twin? James's initial findings were shocking. Kesha had no official birth certificate and no registered family. She had been in 12 different foster homes by the time she was 15, a victim of abuse and neglect. Michael's heart sank as he listened to James recount Kesha's tragic life story. It was a stark contrast to the privileged life Sarah had led, and it filled him with anger and sadness. Meanwhile, Margaret Blackwood, Sarah's mother, received a disturbing call from her sister, Helen. "Maggie, you need to know. I saw Michael yesterday talking to that woman on the street, the one who looks like you know who," Helen whispered, her voice trembling. The fear in Margaret's voice was palpable as she realized the implications of Michael's encounter with Kesha. They had buried their secret for over 30 years, and now it threatened to resurface. Margaret and Helen had made a choice decades ago, one that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They had adopted Sarah but abandoned her twin sister, Kesha, to the foster care system. They had convinced themselves that they were doing what was best for their family, but the guilt had festered over the years. Now, with Michael's interest in Kesha, they feared that their dark past would be exposed. As James continued his investigation, he uncovered more disturbing information. He found records indicating that 2 black twin girls had been separated at birth, one placed for adoption and the other left in foster care. Sarah was listed as informally adopted by the Blackwood family, with no legal documentation to support it. Michael's world began to crumble as he realized the implications of this discovery. His wife had been raised in luxury while her sister had been condemned to a life of hardship. The tension escalated when James called Michael with a breakthrough. "Mike, I got access to the old social services files. 2 black twin girls were separated at birth. One was put up for adoption, and the other went into foster care. Sarah is listed as informally adopted by the Blackwood family," he explained. Michael felt a wave of nausea wash over him. "You're saying that Margaret and Helen chose one child and left her sister to die in the system?" "Yes," James confirmed. "And it seems they managed to keep it a secret for 34 years. That night, Michael received the results of the DNA test he had arranged for Kesha. The results were staggering. Kesha Williams was a 99.7% match to Sarah's genetic samples. They were twin sisters. The silence on the phone was deafening as Michael processed the information. He felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a desperate need for justice. Determined to confront Margaret and Helen, Michael devised a plan. He would gather evidence of their wrongdoing and expose the truth. He instructed James to install discreet cameras in Margaret's house to document any conversations that could reveal their secrets. Michael was resolute. He would not allow Kesha's story to be buried any longer. As Kesha slept in her first clean bed in decades, she remained unaware of the storm brewing around her. She had begun to feel a sense of belonging with Michael and Tommy, but she also sensed that something was amiss. Little did she know that the truth about her past was about to be revealed in a way that would change everything. The day of reckoning arrived when Michael arranged a dinner at Margaret's house. He had carefully planned every detail, knowing that this confrontation would be pivotal. As he entered the elegant living room adorned with photos of Sarah, he felt a mix of determination and trepidation. Margaret greeted him with a false smile, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. "Honey, I'm so glad you've come to your senses," Margaret said, pouring wine into glasses. Michael paused, watching her closely. "That's why I brought some things to show you," he said, placing a tablet on the coffee table and pressing play. Margaret's voice echoed through the room, revealing her conversations with Helen about their plot to keep Kesha hidden. "What if he finds out about what we did 34 years ago?" Margaret's face turned pale as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. The wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Michael continued to play the recordings, exposing the web of lies that had ensnared their family for decades. "You chose which child deserved privilege and which one deserved to die on the streets," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Kesha entered the room just as the truth was laid bare, and the shock on her face mirrored the horror of the revelations. Margaret's desperate attempts to justify her actions fell flat as Kesha confronted her. You call it love to buy a child like an object while condemning her sister to live like an animal for 20 years? Kesha's voice cut through the air, filled with pain and anger. The cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the truth to thousands of viewers. As the confrontation escalated, Michael received a call from Dr. Harrison, the head of his company's board of directors. "Michael, I just watched the live broadcast. The company wants to officially state that Margaret Blackwood is permanently banned from any involvement in the Harrison family business," he announced. The weight of the world seemed to lift from Michael's shoulders as he realized that justice was finally being served. Margaret's world crumbled around her as she faced the consequences of her actions. The cameras captured her humiliation as she was escorted out of her own home by lawyers preparing criminal charges for child trafficking and document forgery. Kesha stood tall, her dignity intact, as she watched the woman who had tried to erase her from existence face the repercussions of her choices. In the months that followed, Kesha transformed her life. With Michael's support, she established the Sarah and Kesha Williams Foundation, dedicated to helping the homeless and reuniting families separated by the system. The foundation quickly gained traction, providing assistance to thousands and advocating for the rights of society's invisible people. Kesha's story resonated with many, and she became a prominent figure in the fight for social justice. She was invited to speak at universities and conferences, sharing her journey from invisibility to empowerment. The Kesha's Law Bill, which required adoption agencies to maintain accessible records of separated siblings, gained support from lawmakers across the country. Meanwhile, Margaret Blackwood faced her own reckoning. She was sentenced to prison for her crimes, her reputation shattered. The once powerful woman who had controlled destinies for decades was now a shadow of her former self, grappling with the consequences of her actions. As Kesha flourished in her new role, she found a sense of belonging with Michael and Tommy. They became a family, united by love and resilience. Tommy often asked Kesha if he could call her his second mom, and she embraced him with tears in her eyes, finally feeling the warmth of a family that chose her. Years later, Kesha received the Chicago Heroine of the Year award at a nationally televised ceremony. Her speech, which went viral, highlighted the importance of love and acceptance. Margaret Blackwood thought she could decide which child deserved love and which deserved abandonment, she said, her voice strong and unwavering. But what she didn't understand is that true love cannot be bought or controlled. Today, I have a family that loves me not because they have to, but because they choose to. As the audience erupted in applause, Kesha felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She had turned her pain into purpose, using her voice to advocate for those who had been silenced for too long. The journey from invisibility to empowerment had been arduous, but it had shaped her into the person she was meant to be. In the end, Kesha's story became a beacon of hope for many. It served as a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, love and resilience could triumph over adversity. Michael learned that sometimes losing something precious could lead to finding something even more valuable, a family built on love and acceptance. As Kesha continued her work, she knew that her journey was far from over. She would keep fighting for justice, for those who had been forgotten, and for the right to be seen and heard. The scars of her past would always remain, but they had become a part of her strength, a strength that would illuminate the path for others still waiting for their chance to shine.